Welcome back to One Comic Book a Day, where we're covering Adventure Comics 162, The Supercoach of Smallville High. Another one of these Superboy stories that's trying to find a reason for Superboy to exist in his own damn story. It's surprising that the Golden Age has so much trouble with this, because as the cynic in me believes, that's probably the first thing they generally thought of, but we've been hitting a lot of stories lately that don't seem to really need Superboy as much as you would think, or they didn't really think about Superboy in general of what he can do to said problem. He could almost be taken out and we could probably find easier ways to solve these. And that's a problem for a Superboy comic. You want the problem to be very specifically only something Superboy can succeed in. Right away, the story feels like it's a decade old because it starts with someone trying to commit suicide. A surprisingly dark thing that happened quite often in early Superman stories, with him saving people from jumping off the bridge and then they would give their backstory. This guy's backstory actually doesn't take all that much time. He was a sports player. I actually am not 100% certain what he played. It was either baseball or football, but due to circumstances, he could never go pro, and his life was ruined from that because he couldn't get a coach job without having pro experience. You know, the problem every Gen Z is discovering now about trying to get an entry-level job, because there's no such thing as an entry-level job. You need 3 years doing an entry-level job to get an entry-level job, which you would think, and be right, wouldn't make that job entry-level. But that's not how corporations think. But I digress. Clark, after saving him, helps him get a job at Smallville, where he's coaching what seems to be the track and field team, something more Olympic-related. And this is where we get the problem. Superboy shows up, gets him his job. Cool. What is Superboy going to do? Well, I guess he could cheat, which I would complain about because I hate it when Superman or Superboy cheats for a sports team, so that doesn't really work either. So, once again, searching for a reason for him to exist. He does help one guy do his chores so he can actually be on the team. That's fine, but that's not what the rest of the action is. A lot of the rest of the action is him just showing them how good he is at these competitions, because of course he would be. He's Superboy, but he could never compete in it because it would be unfair. So that would inspire them to be better. So we get him showing off his powers. Now, I would complain about this because, like, why? Why is he not fighting criminals? Where is the story with Superboy that's needed here? Have him do something. But this actually ends up being the best parts of the comics because he does ridiculous stuff with his powers, like throwing a discus so far it ends up flying across the Martian skyline, so a Martian sees it. He sees an unidentified flying saucer. That's a funny idea. And I could get behind this comic if it was just full of those ideas. These Martians have absolutely nothing to do with the Martians we met in the Orson Welles guest starring story, where Martler, of course, the Hitler-loving Martian. I'm not joking about this if this is the first episode you've watched or you didn't see that episode. There was Martler, the Martian who loved Hitler so much that he created Martian Nazis. I'm not exactly sure what they believed in. They just really liked Hitler. Why did they really like Hitler? Specifically, what policies made them really like Hitler? Never answered that question. And Superman and Orson Welles took them down. Now that's a comic book, not whatever the hell this is. They have nothing to do with that. I've lost my thought here. They have nothing to do with those. They're not even the same designs. These ones are more robotic, but I like that idea. I like the silliness. I like the big idea there that Superboy throws a discus so far that a Martian sees a flying saucer. Cool idea. Could have been all of that, and I would have loved this comic, even without much action. This comic doesn't actually have action either. So this inspires them to be better, but then there's a problem with the other team cheating because there's a whole nother plot here that's been introduced throughout the story, and I'm just bringing it up now with the Mr. Craig who owns the school of the rival team. You heard me, he owns the school of the rival team. Trying to sabotage Smallville because Smallville ruined his own shot at going pro in his young life, getting a scholarship to college. It doesn't really matter all that much. All the problem is, all the conflict in the climax essentially comes down to one guy not having a conversation with somebody for 20 years. It was just a massive understanding that ruined his life. That could have been fixed if he just went over and talked to somebody. So I guess the lesson is go talk to people if something's going wrong and just don't see that they screwed you over. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe not trust it just to text. Maybe go talk to someone in the physical. But Superboy doesn't really do much to accomplish that other than going, hey, maybe you should talk to this guy. How is that a Superboy solving the problems with Superboy powers? Once again, I like small movements of him helping people. But the conflict needs to actually make sense to who Superboy is and what he can do. And they failed at that. So I don't see how this is much of a Superboy story. Okay, that is it from Adventure Comics 161, the Supercoach of Smallville High. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications when a new video goes up. I do this Monday through Friday, but Fridays is Bat Friday, where I cover a Batman story, either Detective Comics or Batman. Until next time, let's ponder the question, whatever did happen to the boy of tomorrow. And do the Martians in this universe, the non-Nazi Martians of this universe, have flying saucers, or do they have a different flying machines? Can they get off the planet? So many questions with these non-Nazi Martians. I'm still lost on the Martian Nazis from that one issue. It's broken my brain. Okay, have a great day.